Well, hello there, and welcome to another edition of Warbird Wednesday. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum, and today we're continuing to go down Reconnaissance Row, whatever you want to call it, with the Martin, the RB-57D, the Canberra. Now, this is a very interesting airplane, and it actually led to the development of another airplane. A completely different company. We'll talk about that a little bit, but first, it is summer. Palm Springs has heated up. It's actually gotten warm here. We had a very cool June, and I am, of course, Greg has togged me as a lifeguard. I don't know that that would be a good thing, Greg. Can you imagine me jumping in a pool, the cries of terror as I came running towards people? We'll toss that off the screen there, and we'll get going there. Another good catch by the Kenny. Now, the RB-57D, and we have a close cousin. This is the WB, not Warner Brothers, 57F. There's a lot of variants of this thing. But for your purists who say it's not the right airplane, it's the same type of airplane, but for a different use. This is the NASA bird. I'll go ahead and throw up the plan view. Now, the first thing that jumps out is look at that wing. That wing is enormous. We're going to talk about that. The first flight of this aircraft, now it was based on a bomber, on an offensive weapon to go out and bomb things. But the military figured out fairly closely from a study in 1952 that they needed a high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft. Now, what was happening at the time was what, Greg? Missiles, SAMs, surface-to-air missiles. And it was no longer just about radar-guided AAA, anti-aircraft artillery, but missiles were pushing these aircraft higher and higher. And the height would give the reconnaissance aircraft, what would it give them, Greg? It would give them time. They know the launch, and also they're moving pretty quickly up high, so they have to. The missile has to traverse. Not only it's not going straight up; it's actually chasing the airplane, because if they fire here, by the time the missile gets up there, the airplane is way down range. So missiles are at a huge. They're very fast, but they're also at a disadvantage on very high-flying airplanes. So in 1952, the Air Force did a study, and they concluded that they needed to push something up to 65,000 feet as an operating ceiling. That's where the 57D came in. Now, the first flight of this aircraft was in 1955. The introduction was in 1956. It was an extremely low build rate in that they only built 20 of these aircraft. Now, they were very unique. They added 42 feet of wing from the original aircraft. The wing was wet. This whole wing was a fuel tank. So they had fuel inside of it. They increased the chord, which is the front to back length of the wing, so from the leading edge to the trailing edge, that's called the chord. So they increased the chord, and the other thing that they did that was really unique about this is to spare the aircraft, because weight is fuel also. You have to be able to get up there and stay there. This aircraft in the wing, it did not have rivets. They did not use rivets. They used glue. So the wings were glued together, if you can, and we're going to talk about that in a second. It had a J57 engine, different engines than the original type, which added about 6,000 pounds of thrust. And the other thing was, this wing was so thin on this aircraft that if you dropped a tool on it, let's say we're working, and you dropped a tool, you literally ran the risk of puncturing the wing. So these were very, very interesting wings. Now, what did all of that cost, Greg? These wings had a 500-hour lifespan. So what does that mean? Because some people at home don't know that. Every airframe, because of the flexing and the moving and everything, has a rated lifespan by the manufacturer. Typically, it's in thousands of hours. I mean, especially military aircraft. They have a term, and they don't use it all the time, but it's called SLAP, Service Life Extension Program. So an airplane, let's say the airplane flies 5,000 hours, they will send the airplane back to the depot, have it all gone through, have it refreshed. Maybe the manufacturer adds a few bracing things to it, and that will allow the airplane to fly further. But a lot of times when you see airplanes going to the what they call the boneyard, into storage, it's because they've reached the end of their lifespan as to how long the manufacturer said they were going to be viable for flight. When that happens, because of the risk of having a wing or a tail or something fall off, the military says, send them into the boneyard. And so a lot of times, that's what happens. Not all the time. And this is a hard learned lesson for the military. The military aviation business has flown these aircraft very hard over the years. And what's ended up happening is there have been periods where the military did not issue warnings about aircraft wearing out and a wing falls off. A great example would be the B-57, where it was doing that lab maneuver where it would go up and then it would throw the bomb, the atomic bomb, at the target. They realized pretty early on with that maneuver was so hard on the wings that it literally shortened the lifespan of the airplane because it was flexing the wings so hard. That's one example. Another example would be the Legacy Hornets, many of which that they just retired. The Marines have them, and the Navy just retired them in favor of the Super Hornet. Many of those aircraft were just basically worn out. They'd flown to the point where their wings were going to fall off. Now, our salute today is specifically, I have never met anybody who flew a Canberra, ever. But if you're out there, especially if you were flying the RB-57D, you were pioneer. You were pioneer in high altitude. You were pioneer in reconnaissance and photo reconnaissance. You were operating a very, very unusual, rare airplane that had, and we're going to talk about some tendencies after we get out of our salute here, but it also had some really bad tendencies as well that we're going to talk about. So you were really on the tip of the spear. Today, if you were an RB-57D aircrewman, pilot, maintainer, we salute you, and we salute you with a treat. Bubble gum, whatever this is. It's interesting looking. 320 calories. Oh my God. I might just explode from drinking it. Let's see. The added sugar, it has 78 grams of added sugar that are 156% of your daily requirement. What are you doing here? Greg's like just laughing his rear end off there. All right, we're going to go ahead and open it. Ooh, there was a little bit of a, not much. This doesn't look too old. It does have a best buy date of April 30th, 23. So it is expired. Oh, who's counting, right? Who's quibbling? Thanks, Greg. All right, if you were an RB-57D pilot, crew member, or maintainer, or involved with the program designer, I salute you. Yeah, that's really gone. There's no carbonation left whatsoever. Ooh, not only that, it is like mainlining, you know, bazooka bubblegum? That's what it is. Imagine bazooka bubblegum like on steroids. All right, I'm putting the cap on that in case it falls over and burns through the table or something. But that was nasty. So in 1952, they did this study and they came up with this type of design of aircraft. Now, the interesting thing about it was so secret that it was originally known as Weapon System MX-2147. Its code name within the CIA was Bald Eagle. Bald Eagle. So another Fred fun fact. Now, let's talk about you're flying an exotic airplane. You have all these interesting things, especially with the wing. Let's say the wing is the big issue. Well, first thing is you have to be careful about de-icing the airplane, because what does the de-icing fluid do? It dissolves the glue on the wing. So they literally had these aircraft that would come in, land, and the wing would fall off. And that happened not just once. Fortunately, there are incidents where the wing came off and there was not a fatality. In other words, the pilot was able to get out. If it came off low, you're hosed, which is a technical term. But apparently, when the wing came off, it was up high. Pilot was able to get out, but you could not use de-icing fluid on it. The other thing was the wing created so much lift, even at low speeds, that the best way to get the airplane on the runway was to stall it. So you would literally do these little micro stalls trying to get the airplane on the ground. And so it was a handful to fly, and for that reason, now on the 500-hour piece, they did go back in and they reworked the wings, and they've done, they kept refurbishing the airplane. I'm not saying that they didn't, but it was pretty clear by the late 50s that this was a stopgap measure. And again, in historical context, the United States was absolutely frantic about trying to figure out what the Soviets were doing with ICBMs and bomber bases. And the Soviets were doing everything possible to make it impossible for the United States to get good reconnaissance. They were shooting down airplanes. They were doing all kinds of stuff. So this was what I would call an exotic stopgap measure. But it did work. I mean, they were able to get photo reconnaissance, side-looking radar, all kinds of things out of this airplane that made it work. But at the end of the day, the military-industrial establishment realized that this was a stopgap, and they needed something else. And what was that? The U-2. So the U-2, which is famous, and we are going to cover in this series. It's coming. I've already gotten those questions. Are we going to do the U-2? Yes, we're going to do the U-2. But ultimately, this aircraft spawned the need for a purpose-built, high-altitude, not a Band-Aid airplane. The airplanes did not end there. They went on. They were surplus. Some of them went to NASA. They did atmospheric work. They would be sniffers for high-altitude nuclear tests. They go up and do high-altitude nuclear tests, but they actually kind of went into history. Now, my biggest regret is there were a couple of these for sale at auction. I'll tell you, this was one time where we were a day late and $1 short, and I don't know who bought one of these. I was chasing one of them pretty hard. We could have been great for the collection. It's kind of an unusual airplane, but we didn't get it. So if you have one laying around the house, let me know. But eventually, the aircraft kind of went. They're no longer practical. The jet engines aren't practical. The wings take too much work, and so they kind of went in history. But at the time, they were very ingenious, American, British, and it was actually really Martin, but different companies that really made this thing happen. And so to all those folks, we really do have to salute them. Now, if you want to impress your friends, it is the summer, you can go out and click on the link and have this beautiful, what looks like an airspeed, but is really a thermometer. Greg had to explain this to me. This is a thermometer. You go out, click that link. Jason will hot foot it. A good one. Hot foot it down to the shipper to get that out to you. We'd love to do that. If you came across us on YouTube and all you like are military aircraft videos and you don't want too much production, we do it in one take. Greg does a great job, the edit, he gets out all my faux pas. If you like military airplanes, we will work through them. Right now we're working through a reconnaissance series. I already have the idea for the next one. We just did a trifecta on viewer suggestions. If you have a suggestion on a series of aircraft you'd like us to do, let us know. But we'd really love that subscription. Give us a like. If you come across us on Facebook, give us a like, give us a comment. We will respond back to you. We cannot do all of this. I'm standing in front of the old movie Memphis Belle here, which is getting ready to have her props put back on. It's an airworthy B-17. She's going to eventually fly at some point. We cannot do all of this without your generous donation, so click on that link and give us a donation. And if you're trying to teach the kids at home, we have our education links in there. There's a ton of educational tools, videos, study guides that you can use at home to get the kids excited about math, science, and engineering. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum. Thanks so much. Have a great day.